So, as we kind of understand that there's problems with the Argument Confederation, there's a meeting that's held, and it's probably one of the most important meetings ever. So, it's the Constitutional Convention of 1787. All right, so in the spring of 17, spring/summer, I guess, in the spring of 1787, there's going to be leaders from 12 states, except Rhode Island, nice, that are going to meet in Philly to address the problems of the new nation. So, eventually, they were going to just kind of meet, talk about what's going on, what's good, what's bad, what can we fix, where does adjustments need to be made, and then all of a sudden it's going to kind of be like, well, we need to probably just kind of make something else. Well, the elected president of the convention is going to be nobody else but George Washington, and this is kind of what's going to happen. So two kind of groups are going to emerge here. You're going to have the Federalists and you're going to have the Anti-Federalist, and what I always try to tell people is when you're thinking about the federal government, you need to think about the Federalist Party. All right, so this says two factions. So two factions. Imagine a faction being like a political party. And they emerge from the debate whether over to either revise the Articles of Confederation or to create a brand new constitution. All right, the Federalists, they believe in a strong central government. So they believe, just like in today's world, so you can kind of guess who's going to win this, the federal government should have some power. Not enough power to where the states can't do anything that they want or have certain liberties that they wouldn't underneath Britain, but to the point where the federal government has power, and if stuff happens, the federal government has the ability to act and be effective in their action. People who are following this is George Washington, Madison, Hamilton. Then the other group is going to be the exact opposite of that, and these are the Anti-Federalists. This is Samuel Adams, Patrick Henry, and they're going to favor something that is states and individual rights. And they're fearing a strong central government. They fear that this strong central government is going to lead to tyranny and be like Britain. All right? And when you got to understand here, I need you guys to have a connection between states' rights and individual rights. All right? What states' rights are is the ability for states to have certain rules and regulations that govern that state. They believe that if the states have the ability to do that, they are then protecting the individual's rights that are in that state. So you need to understand that states' rights equals individual rights. And when I share my coach's notes, you guys will understand that because I write it down for you. All right? And these are kind of the differences between the two factions that we got coming up here. So we'll start James Madison. All right, and here's the problem. Just like in today's world with the Democrats and Republicans, you can have two Democrats sitting in a room who, they may vote Democrat, but they have completely different opinions on how Democratic or how left or how center or whatever. Same thing for the Republicans. You can have two Republicans sitting in a room, and they can be completely on different sides of the spectrum on different issues. And this slide kind of highlights that here. So you have two Federalists, all right? James Madison, he's a supporter of strong central government. Alexander Hamilton, same thing. James Madison believed there should be term limits for the executive branch. Alexander Hamilton says a powerful executive who serves for life. Okay, well, Madison believes that the government should be ruled by public opinion and active participation by its citizens, so the common man, so like by voting, stuff like that. Hamilton believes the government should be ruled by the wealthy and political elite. Now, let's think about this. While I'm not hating on Alexander Hamilton, and he's going to come, in handy in a little bit here, but that kind of sounds like Britain to me, so the people are kind of be like, look, I'm not saying you're wrong, but that's the part of the federal government that we can't have be that strong. We need some flexibility. We need these Americans to be able to vote and to be able to feel the change that they want. All right, and so here's going to be kind of some of the features of the Constitution. So first, separation of powers. So I think everybody's on the same page here. We do not want this tyranny. We do not want a king. We do not want anything like that. So the Founding Fathers agreed to separate the new government into three distinct branches. All right, and this becomes from an Enlightenment thinker. And what this is going to do is going to create three branches, and I kind of want to simplify that, which we have here in this PowerPoint for you. So you're going to have the legislative, you're going to have the executive, and you're going to have the judicial branch. This is how our government's going to be broken up. Each of those branches have laws, and they have the ability to kind of stop and limit another branch, meaning the executive branch can't do whatever it wants. That's like when people say, oh, well, so-and-so is going to get elected, and they're going to go in there, they're going to do this, this, and this. And I keep trying to tell them, like, you guys don't understand how government works. You can't just walk into the president of the United States and be, oh, well, this is what we're going to do. No, there's a process. There's, you have to go through meetings and voting and restructuring the bill, and it's a long process. So it's not easy to get stuff done in government because you have a whole bunch of people that are either working with you and against you, but you got to come to some sort of agreement which is decent for all parties. So the legislative branch, their job is to make the laws. That's what they do. They make the laws. Can't go over 45. Have to be wearing a seatbelt. Stuff like that. And those are very minuscule laws, and not necessarily an example for a Federalist term, but they make the laws nonetheless. I think we understand that. The judicial branch, I'm going to jump down to them. Their job is to interpret the laws. Okay, so let's say you have an infraction. They're the people at the courts. They're the ones that are saying, hey, yes, you did break this law due to this, or no, you did not due to this. Their job is to say yes or no. Okay, their job is not to create the laws. Their job is to say, yes, you did, no, you didn't. And then the third branch is the executive branch, and their job is to enforce the laws, right? Make it, then you go to the judicial. Okay, did they break it? Did they not? You have your decision. Yes, they did. It goes to the executive branch. They're the ones that are enforcing it. Okay, so you need to know kind of the idea of separation of powers. And then this little graph is great. So you have, these three branches, and you can see these arrows here. This is kind of like their power against the other one. So each branch has the ability to limit the other one, right? So like the judicial branch can declare laws unconstitutional. Well, who are they limiting? Well, they're limiting the legislative, right? Because the legislative is the ones that they're creating laws. All right, well, the executive branch, well, that's the president. Well, how can they limit? Well, they can veto bills. Okay. How can the judicial courts limit the president? Well, they can declare presidential acts unconstitutional, right? As we've seen, legislative branch can impeach the president. So the checks and balances and separation of powers is kind of the same thing. So separation of powers means that each branch has its own section of power. The checks and balances portion is each branch has the power to limit the actions of the other two. So no branch can just dominate. Every branch has its own power, and every branch has the ability to limit other branches. That's the checks and balances system. And this is how we're going to effectively make sure that, we don't have a tyranny. We don't have this type of government that just rules over everybody else. Fast five, make sure you write those down. So bicameral is going to mean two types or two branches of government. Why were the people unhappy with Articles of Confederation? They're unhappy because there's no power. They need more power. What was the central argument between Federalists and Anti-Federalists? Who has the power, the state or the federal government? Separation of powers, and I've went over that, and I just went over the three branches of American government and their major responsibility. All right, so the plans of the rival plans of the government. So delegates are going to debate how to best distribute representatives to the new Congress or to each state. And two plans are going to start to emerge here. You're going to have the Virginia plan, and you're going to have the New Jersey plan. When you think of Virginia plan, I need you to think of large states. Why? Because the state of Virginia is larger than the state of New Jersey. All right, they want a bicameral, which is a two-house legislature with larger populated states having more members. So that means essentially if Virginia has more people living in it than New Jersey, they get more members in the House, okay? So they want it based on population. The New Jersey plan, all right, this would retain unicameral, so one house legislator, and all states have equal members. So this says it does not matter how many people you have living in your state. You're each going to get the same amount of votes. So if there's 5 people living in Georgia and there's 25,000 people living in Virginia, we each get 1 vote. That's what that means. All right. And so there's obviously going to be debates on which plan is better. The larger states are going to want the Virginia plan because they feel like they're better represented. The New Jersey plan is going to be wanted by smaller states because they feel like they have a chance and their vote means something. And this is going to lead us to something called the Great Compromise. So the Great Compromise says proposed by bicameral legislator that appeases both big and small states. So what it does is it takes the New Jersey plan and the Virginia plan and it throws them together. All right. So the Senate, they're going to have equal representation. So 2 per state. Okay. These are appointed by state legislators at this time. Now they're appointed by the people. Okay. So it's 2 per state. So the Senate is based off of the New Jersey plan because that's equal representation, right? It does not matter how many people live there. You get 2. Every state gets 2. Okay. So the Senate has 100 people in it. Okay. The House of Representatives. This is based on population directly elected by the people. All right. So this is how you get your House of Representatives and how certain states have more representation than others, right? So California should have more representation than Massachusetts. That's just how it is. There's more people living in California. So they're going to have more representation because they feel as if that representation equally helps their people and their population. And if you're wondering, this is kind of off track, but the Electoral College, how you get how states get that number, well, you add these two. You add the number of House of Representatives you have plus 2, and that gives you your Electoral College number. All right. Now, there's going to be this issue of slavery, and this is kind of sparking this. We've been talking about slavery when talking about the plantation system, when talking about the going away of indentured servitude, and we're going to keep talking about it all the way from the Civil War until the end of this class because it is still an issue in society today. So the issue of slavery in the Constitution, a debate is going to spark between Northern and Southern delegates. The South fears that the North is going to have way more population, which they do. So they feel like essentially the North is going to dominate every decision that needs to be made in political office. And the South is going to fear that, the institution of slavery is going to be in jeopardy. So all knew that the issue of slavery could tear apart this newly formed country. And this is kind of what they're going to have to appease the South when talking about the issue of slavery in the Constitution. So first, the Constitution is going to forbid Congress from blocking the importation of slaves for 20 years. So for 20 years, nothing's going to be touched. Second, they're going to issue the 3/5 compromise, which slaves are going to count as 3/5 of a person in allocating state representation. So this is going to help how many people they can get in the House of Representatives. And then all states are required to return fugitive slaves or runaways to their owners. Now, this is big because when this gets passed, the South is going to start to be on board with, ratifying this new Constitution. And, just like the American Revolution, there's going to be a lot of things that are being pushed to try to get people on board with joining this new Constitution. So the Founding Fathers decided that ratification by only 9 states, so not all, would be enough to get the Constitution into law. The final draft is adopted in September. And they're going to be sent to individual state legislators. The Federalist paper is going to be released. So the Federalist, it's a series of essays written by Hamilton, Madison, John Jay. And essentially they're going to promote the views of the Federalist faction or the Federalist Party, supporting a strong central government. And many state legislators were anti-Federalist and really refused to ratify. Now, and this is the last thing I'm going to talk about here. So Southern states did not want to ratify the Constitution. And what's going to get them to ratify the Constitution is going to be the Bill of Rights. So the Bill of Rights is going to be issued, and it's going to protect the individual rights. Remember, individual rights equals states' rights of these Southern states. And the big thing is you're going to have a list of 10 amendments that is going to be composed by James Madison, and this is intended to protect the individuals and states from a strong central government and give them certain specified rights. And the big one here is going to be the 10th Amendment. And the 10th Amendment is going to say, whatever power is not listed in the Constitution is going to be listed in or up to the or up to the states, and